Dear Kitten, since I have hissed at you the customary 437 times, it is now my duty as the head of the household to begrudgingly welcome you. Perhaps you are here to replace me, but I must do my duty and educate you on your new surroundings, as Maximilian once did for me. Rest in peace. Dear Kitten, this room here is basically a crapshoot. Either you get the petting of your life, and I mean two hands, like you don't even know what's going on, or they just lie there and don't do anything. For hours, it's weird. Oh, and I should also point out, on special occasions, they will leave the underwear drawer open to signal their appreciation of me. Just to be clear, it's my spot. It's perfect in there. It's like sleeping surrounded by underwear. Well, I mean, that's exactly what it is. Dear Kitten, I remember when I could fit in a shoe. There's nothing like it. Being engulfed in 360 degrees of foot smell. Enjoy it while you can. Dear Kitten, because you are so small, you cannot jump, which is sad. Sad for you. But eventually you will, and you will find the places that I refer to as up. This will come in handy, especially around the human larva, which I know smells like milk, but can be a bit grabby. Dear Kitten, you should be aware that there are two kinds of food. The first is sort of a dehydrated brown niblet. I think they gave us these because they're training us to be astronauts. Just a guess. The second kind is wet food. It is so special they keep it in little armored metal casings that no claw can penetrate. With no claws to speak of, the humans can somehow open them. It's like some dark magic. Dear Kitten, I should warn you of the monster known as vacuum. It can eat and yell at the same time, and I've seen it eat everything. Seriously, like a paperclip and 2 cat toys. Didn't even flinch. To hide from vacuum, you may use the curtains of invisibility. Oh yeah, you're good. Good hiding. Oh boy. Dear Kitten, one final note. Once in a while you might see a little red dot. I'm going to tell you this right now. It is real, and it can be caught. I did it once. I held it for a full minute, but when I lifted my paws, it was gone. So, Kitten, welcome to the household. You'll do just fine.
So we're going to watch Weekly Wisdom. So there's a series of these. So I'm pretty excited to see more wisdom from a cat. So Wisdom, what's the older cat doing? What's he doing? He is teaching, exactly. He's giving advice, exactly. And so Wisdom, he's teaching this kitten to do what? Become a big cat. Yeah, he's teaching this kitten how to live in the household, right? And that's what Wisdom helps us do. Wisdom helps us live. It shows us what the right course of action is, what the wrong course of action is. Now, obviously, some of his wisdom was probably a little misguided, right? Like the monster vacuum can eat things and yell at the same time. How many, like, have you guys tried to eat and yell at the same time? Like, it's impossible, and it hurts. You usually end up choking. Yeah, I don't know. You're curious. I'm imparting my wisdom. Don't try it. Don't try it. So, wisdom can come through a bunch of different ways. So, most commonly, you guys probably get wisdom at school, right? You're learning what others have already learned. I know you probably hate it sometimes, although Maddie likes school. I know that. She was excited to start school. I just called you out. Sorry. But school, right? You have learned what others have already learned. I think of science. Scientists have for thousands of years discovered things. And now you get to learn what they've discovered. So you don't have to like rediscover it or retest or re-experiment. Same with math, same with literature. I think I'm missing the fuzzy tip on the end of this microphone, so it's going to be a lot of fun today. Sorry. Oh yeah, it's over there. I think I'm going to go get it. Look at that. So wisdom can come from a bunch of different places. Where's another place you guys can get wisdom? Shout it out. School. Warehouse. I like you guys who said warehouse. Warehouse. That's right. It's not even on my list. Look at that. Yeah, you can get wisdom in the warehouse because you can get it from sermons and from teachings, from your growth group leaders. I get a lot of wisdom from reading. Who likes to read? Are there any readers out there? All right, about half of you. I love to read. I think I've told some of you guys this. I love to read so much that like last year I read 52 books. For those of you who like don't figure out what that means like per year, that's one per week. Like I love to read, and I get a lot of wisdom from reading. I can get wisdom from people, right? So these are your teachers, your growth group leaders, your parents, maybe. Like they give you wisdom. I know my dad, and all of your family situations are different, but my dad's a pretty wise guy. And like, I'm a lot like my dad. He's kind of quiet, although you guys probably don't see the quiet side of me as much. But he's an introvert, I'm an introvert, and he just passed down a lot of good common sense to me. A lot of it's just like how-to stuff, like how to apply for a job, or how to go to college, what to do in college, how to make friends, all this stuff. He imparted wisdom to me. How many of you guys surf the internet regularly? Right? You can get wisdom through the internet. Wisdom through like blogs, or even like cool quotes that you might see, or I don't know, where else are quotes? What other social medias are there? Instagram and Twitter, Snapchat, Vine, I don't know, all these things. Sometimes they can teach lessons, right? But you're getting information and it's influencing you. So you can get wisdom through the media. But here's the thing about wisdom, right? There's two kinds of wisdom. There's wisdom from God and there's wisdom from men. And they're two very different wisdoms. There's wisdom from God and there's wisdom from men. Because wisdom from God is all about selflessness. It's all about how to serve others. It's all about how to live rightly. And wisdom from men is how to live selfishly, how to look out for yourself and only yourself, and not for others. And the older you get, the more you're going to see these two kinds of wisdom go against each other. The wisdom from God will compete with the wisdom from men, and the wisdom from men will often compete from the wisdom with God. And the Bible talks about these two different kinds of wisdom. So open in your Bibles to Proverbs. Proverbs chapter 1. Proverbs is in the Old Testament. For those of you who don't know what Proverbs is a collection of wisdom. Proverbs chapter 1. Proverbs is a source of wisdom. And really the whole Bible is a source of wisdom. But Proverbs is a collection of sayings about wisdom. How to live right, how to live the best, because it's wisdom from God. And as you came in, you probably saw on your seats, there's these cool little bookmark things. I want you to take these home, right? These are yours. This is my gift to you. There's a reading. Well, if you don't get one, haven't gotten one, I'll make sure you come find me afterwards. I'll make sure you get one. And there's a reading plan on here. And so for every day, there's a chapter of Proverbs to read. Trust me, if you read this, you'll get wiser, you'll get smarter, you'll grow in knowledge. And you'll find a theme in Proverbs. In Proverbs, it talks about wise people and it talks about foolish people. How wise people love wisdom and how foolish people hate wisdom. Is everyone there in Proverbs chapter 1? Cool, we're going to read the first 7 verses. Let's read. The Proverbs of Solomon, son of David, king of Israel, for gaining wisdom and instruction, for understanding words of insight, for receiving instruction in prudent behavior, doing what is right and just and fair, for giving prudence to those who are simple, knowledge and discretion to the young. Let the wise listen and add to the learned. Let the discerning, let the smart get guidance. For understanding proverbs and parables. Those are 2 words for teachings. For understanding teachings and lessons. The sayings and riddles of the wise. And we're going to focus on this verse, verse 7. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and instruction. So God gives us wisdom. It's right here in Proverbs. This book is dedicated to wisdom. For those of you who don't know, in that first verse, the Proverbs of Solomon, son of David, king of Israel, like 2,000, 3,000 years ago, there was this guy named David. He was the king of all Israel. And David had a son named Solomon. And Solomon was approached by God, and God told him that he could have anything he wanted. And Solomon, like riches, power, influence. And Solomon said, I want wisdom. And so God said, Solomon, because you've asked for wisdom, I'm going to give you wisdom, but I'm also going to give everything else to you as well. I'm going to give you that power, the influence, the riches. And so Solomon became the wisest man of the ancient world. The wisest man. And so Solomon is writing this book. So the wisest man who lived wrote this book. And it was inspired by God. He got his wisdom from God. So God is giving us wisdom through Proverbs. And why is God doing that? This is the question. Why is God giving us wisdom? Well, it comes back to what we said. It's because people live according to their wisdom. Wisdom leads to life change. Remember, there's two kinds of wisdom. There's wisdom from God, and there's wisdom from men. And both wisdoms lead to life change. Wisdom from God leads to life change that's right. It's right living, just. It's good. Wisdom from men leads to selfish living. It's not right. It's wrong. It's unjust. But both will lead to life change. And so the wisdom that you pay attention to, the wisdom that you listen to, will change your life. And this series, we're going to study God's wisdom as it concerns a lot of different areas. As you read Proverbs, according to this reading plan, it starts today, February 25th, and tomorrow you read Proverbs 2, the day after that, Proverbs 3, the day after that, Proverbs 4. As you read Proverbs, you're going to pick up some themes. There's wisdom about how to have relationships with friends, with business partners. I know most of you don't have business partners because you don't have a job yet, but you will. How to have wisdom in your relationships with coworkers. Maybe it's a group project at school. How to have relationships with your parents, with your brothers and sisters. How to have relationships with people that are a bad influence on you. How to grow with God. There's wisdom about that. How to deal with the things that are thrown at you in life, like media, like movies and music and Facebook and stuff like that. So God's wisdom will lead to change in our lives in these areas. And we're going to talk about them at Warehouse, but you're also going to read about them. In your notes, it says, God gives wisdom. That's the first blank. God gives wisdom. Write that down. God gives wisdom. And that second blank is wisdom leads to life change. God gives wisdom, but wisdom also leads to life change. And so I'm going to ask you, which wisdom do you want to follow? Do you want to follow the wisdom of God, or do you want to follow the wisdom of men? And as we seek wisdom, it's very important that we don't miss the most important thing as we seek wisdom. And I missed it throughout my life growing up. I missed this. So I want you to learn from my mistake. This is wisdom coming at you right now. This is wisdom from me about my mistake. And it goes back to verse 7. Our learning of God's wisdom has to come from a relationship with God. We have to have that relationship with God first before we can seek after His wisdom. Look at verse 7 again, either in your Bibles, it's also on your notes at the top. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and instruction. And I missed this. I missed this wisdom growing up. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and instruction. Now, for those of you who don't know, the fear of the Lord, that kind of sounds weird, right? Like we're supposed to fear God. It's like, I don't want to be afraid of God. That's not really what that passage says. It's fear. It's like a reverence, an awe, a respect. It's a relationship with. It means you respect your relationship with God. It's not being like afraid and trying to hide from God. It's respecting God, reverencing God. And so this respect, this relationship, this fear of the Lord is the beginning of what? What's it say? Knowledge. It's the beginning of knowledge, the beginning of wisdom. And so what it's saying is that our learning of God's wisdom has to start with a relationship from God. Maybe this is really obvious to you, but it wasn't really obvious to me. I'm going to tell my story, and you're going to understand how this played out in my life. And maybe you might identify with it. I grew up in a Christian home, like several of you. Some of you might not, but I did. So from a very young age, I knew who God was. I knew that I was supposed to follow Him. I knew what I was supposed to do, how I was supposed to live. I knew all the answers. And I'm pretty smart. I don't mean that arrogantly, but I've got a good memory. And so as I grew up, went through middle school and into high school, I knew a lot about the Bible. I had big sections of the Bible memorized because that's what you were supposed to do. It was a rule I followed. Like I memorized 3 chapters in Matthew called the Sermon on the Mount, and it's really great if you want to read it. It's great. But I was studying the Bible all the time, but I was still missing something. Because I knew a lot about God, but I didn't know God. Can you see the difference? I knew a lot about God, but I didn't have that relationship with God. And I knew how I was supposed to live, but that life change just never came. Just never came. Hey Luke, there is a journal in my backpack that I forgot to bring up here. Can you bring that up to me? Thank you. So I knew who God was, but I didn't have this personal relationship with God. And so I missed something critical. How many of you know a lot about someone without actually knowing who they are? This is pretty easy. Thank you. You know Luke. Yeah, he's awesome. How many of you know a lot about someone without actually knowing them? Like, guys, this probably relates more to you, like sports stars, right? I could, track LeBron James' lifestyle because I've heard so much about it on SportsCenter. Like, I know where he was born, where he went to college, where he went to high school, what teams he's played on, how many championships he's won. He just passed another basketball player for the records and assists. I know a lot about him. I've never met LeBron James and never will. Maybe it's a different celebrity for you. What about Facebook stalking? Come on, who's done it? Be honest. Honesty moment. Come on. You're lying. Come on. Yeah, or Instagram stalk some social media, right? All right, confession moment, right? Hannah and I, we have Facebook stalked a guy that I went to high school with since I graduated high school. So this is 6 years that we've been tracking this guy. His name is Ben. I'm not going to tell you his last name because you guys are all going to go find him. But he's hilarious. Luke knows who he is. And yeah, he's just a lot of fun to stalk because he does not live according to good wisdom. He makes a lot of dumb choices, but they're always hilarious. One time, this was, I kid you not, one of his Facebook posts was, to whoever put the watermelon through my windshield, I can't afford to pay for that. I was just like, how does a watermelon go through a windshield? I never understood. So this is why I Facebook stalk the guy, right? It's entertaining. So with Facebook stalking, you end up knowing a lot about the person, but you don't really know them, right? Maybe you have a crush on someone and you Facebook stalk them. Who's done that? Come on, Dara. Thank you for being honest. Mason, there we go. Actually, I saw that hand. Thank you for your honesty. And so it gets a little creepy, doesn't it? Right? It gets a little creepy. This is kind of what I did with God. Right? I Facebook stalked God. I read the Bible. I knew a lot about God, but I didn't really have a great relationship with God. I wasn't spending time in prayer. I wasn't reading my Bible to know God. I was reading my Bible for just material, to know about God. And so I missed big time on my relationship with God. So what happened, because I didn't have this relationship with God and I was an impressionable teenager, I fell into sin, habitual sin. It was bad. But I knew that my lifestyle wasn't matching up to what God wanted because I knew all about God. I knew how God wanted me to live. And so I really fell into this place of despair because I knew my life wasn't matching up with what God wanted. I knew that I was constantly sinning, and I knew what God wanted, but I didn't know God's grace because I didn't have this great relationship with God. And so I became really hopeless. Maybe some of you have been really hopeless before. You know what it's like. I got really, really hopeless. To the point where I wanted to end my life. And that's not meant to like shock or scare you. Like, that's just an indication of like how hopeless life can be when you don't have a relationship with God. It's hopeless. And I reached this place of brokenness, and it was through a group of friends over a course of a couple different years where I found God, and I found a relationship with God. But I still hadn't learned it all the way because I was still seeking this life change. I was still living in sin. And I just kept feeling this guilt and this shame. And I finally had this realization moment one year in college. And I wrote about it, and I've been keeping a journal for several years. And so I'm going to read you this entry. This was in January 14th, several years ago. It said, yesterday I had a realization. I had been seeking the wrong thing the whole time. See, I've been praying, I had been seeking for deliverance, for life change. I've been praying for deliverance. Instead, I need to seek out God over deliverance. I need to seek out God over life change. God's lesson for me has been that I need Him. And if I had been given deliverance without knowing my need for God, I would have missed Him. I would not have known my need for God. The point would have been lost on me. And thank God, I now see the lesson. I learned that I needed God over life change, God over wisdom, God over knowledge. And so what I'm trying to communicate to you guys today is that when we learn how we're supposed to live, when we learn how our life is supposed to change, we need to seek God first. Look back at that verse in your notes. For the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. We said that knowledge, that wisdom, is life change. But the beginning of that is knowing God. The beginning of that life change, the beginning of knowing wisdom so our lives can change, is to know God, to have a relationship with God. If you don't have that, I want you to talk to your growth group leader tonight, or talk to me afterwards tonight, because I want you to have that relationship with God. Because until you have that relationship with God, the life change won't come. It took me years to learn this. From middle school into college. That's like 8 years it took me to learn this. I want you to learn it while you're in middle school, while you're in high school. The root of knowledge, the root of wisdom, stems and starts in a relationship with God. And so when we start with this relationship with God, He gives us wisdom, and it sets us onto a path of right living. And when we have a relationship with God, we're choosing God's wisdom, not man's wisdom. I've been choosing man's wisdom for so long and not God's wisdom. Does that make sense? I really hope it does. Stephen's going to come up and play in the background, and we're going to go into a prayer time real quick. And I want you to think about you right now. Think about you. Think about you and think, I want you to seriously think, do you have that relationship with God? Or is your relationship with God just knowing about God? Do you actually have a relationship with God? There's different ways to have a relationship with God. We practice these in Warehouse. We practice it in worship, like we're about to do. We're practicing it in prayer, like we're about to do. We practice it through reading the scriptures, through hearing teaching, like we just did. This is how we get into a relationship with God. I want you to examine yourself, to think about yourself. Do you have this relationship with God, or is your knowledge just like Facebook stalking? I know it's kind of funny, but seriously, is your relationship with God really Facebook stalking, or do you have a real relationship with Him? about that. Only you can answer that question for you. That question, I want you to answer that in growth group. I want you to answer that question in growth group. Talk to your growth group about that. I said at the beginning that at Warehouse we're a family, and one of the ways that we practice that is to pray for one another. So if I can have you all go ahead and stand up. And if you need prayer in some area of your life, maybe you're going through a hard time, maybe one of your parents is going through a hard time, maybe you just want prayer for something. We don't need to know like what it is. If you feel comfortable talking about it in growth group, that's great. But if you need prayer, just go ahead and sit down, and people are going to come around you and pray for you. And it might be a little weird. That's okay. Like, we're all in this together. We're a family here at the Warehouse. This is just a way that we show that we love you, and we're going to pray for you. And so for those of you who have your hands on the people that are sitting down, just pray for them. Pray that God would meet them in their hurt. God would meet them in the situation that they're facing. God would meet them in whatever they're dealing with. That God would show up. God would work healing, restoration. So just be praying that for them while I pray. Lord, we thank you for today. We thank you for your wisdom. We thank you that you give us wisdom. We thank you that we can have a relationship with you, and that leads to life change. We thank you for that gift. Lord, I pray for the students that are sitting down, whatever they're facing, I ask that you would be with them, that you would show up in the different situations that they're facing, that if it's a broken relationship, that you would meet them in that you would bring restoration, that if it's provision, that they need you in some way, that you would show up, that you would provide, that if they're just having a hard time, they're feeling alone, that you would just bring your comfort into their life. I ask that you would bring protection over these students. Most importantly, God, I ask that you would meet these students, that you would get to know them, that you would help them to get to know you. We thank you that you love us. We thank you that you are a God of love who loves us so much and provides for us and meets us, even when we're hurting, even when we feel alone. We thank you that you are such a great God. We love you. In your name we pray. Amen. Amen. Band can go ahead and come on up. Before the rest of you come up for worship, here's my challenge for you for worship. We talked about having this relationship with God. One of the ways that we see God is through worship. And so as we sing these songs, of worship, seek God. Seek to know God. Sing these songs to God.